I did a project 20 plus years ago, which stands as a really good example of form-based coding. They had the zoning code. We did an overlay. But the most important work came when we set up an architect's office in a vacant retail space right on Columbia Pike. And we had architect's hours, and neighbors stopped by. They were often after business hours because lots of people, they're at work. They can't stop at an architect's office during the day. So I was there at night and weekends. We had an open door. We invited neighbors to come in and tell us what was important to them when we're thinking about this revitalization of this area. What do you want as a neighbor? What's important to you? They didn't just speak to us, they drew. We had easels up. Little kids and older folks were drawing ideas. And you know, I saw so much of trees in the sidewalk, boulevards. We had awnings. We wanted some sidewalk protection from the rain. They also wanted to have their neighborhood place they could hang out. They wanted green space too. What we wanted to do was engage with as many stakeholders as possible, and definitely with the neighbors, those that are most impacted, and the business owners. So we collected all of these ideas, and over many, many months of work with a lot of people, we came up with a form-based code. Lots of diagrams, pretty renderings that talk about, you know, the quality of the space that we wanted to try to achieve. And you can go there today and judge for yourself whether this is a pleasant place to be. The House of Sweden is the Swedish Embassy in Washington, D.C. The project is a pretty challenging project because, first of all, the site that the Swedish government selected had never really been developed. And this particular site is where Rock Creek comes into the Potomac River. Water is an important element of life in Sweden. They wanted a showcase of life in Sweden in their embassy. They, on the one hand, picked the perfect site. On the other hand, they picked the most challenging site. Why? Because the site is in a floodplain. So we had to protect it against floods. How are you going to do that? My first question for the Swedish government was, what level of security are we looking for? This is an embassy. In those days, US embassies were hardening all around the world. They were building new embassies that were much more protected than the old ones. Ultimately, they wanted security, but they didn't want it to look like security. They wanted it to be transparent. And so we were talking about a glass box in a floodplain. Not only did we have to install invisible floodgates that only go up when the floods are coming, we had to tie it to bedrock so it doesn't get up and float away. Fascinating project. You can't see all the technical stuff behind it. You just see a beautiful glass building. The National Gallery of Art had to make way for a renovation of all their mechanical systems in the gallery building, which meant they had to move all of the administrative staff out of the gallery into office space across the street. The folks that work at the National Gallery of Art love to come to work every day in the gallery. And the prospect of moving out of the gallery into an office building across the street was not appealing to anybody. So it's really my job to gain consensus of all the staff at the NGA to kind of follow us across the street. What it did take was lots of discussions, lots of charrettes, engagement with end users and stakeholders, and listening, a lot of listening. I knew from experience that as long as people are listened to and they felt that they were heard, even if they couldn't get that wish list item, they felt like they were heard. And that makes a huge difference in building trust and really effective engagement. And furthermore, in the new office across the street, we strategically designed it. There were views back to the gallery building through the glass. But we intentionally, as soon as you came off the elevator and turned toward the reception area, you see through the windows, the dome, the gallery, the classical architecture right through the window. We also framed a lot of prints of the work of art from the gallery, just to remind people of what they were working for. And they're all passionate about the art. So there's a literal visual connection back to the gallery from all the spaces in this new office space. Signature Theater started as an upstart, kind of grungy theater in an industrial area of Arlington in an old auto body factory. They grew this theater company into an amazing cultural phenomenon. And frankly, they outgrew the garage. They had an opportunity from Arlington County to enter into a public-private venture. They envisioned it being not just a theater, but also a public library. Now, Signature Theater was a loud, booming theater. Public library is very quiet. And so you can understand the concern that we had immediately when we knew we had to marry these two entities together in a single building. Here you can envision a project where the theater is at the end of a boulevard and is basically a keystone and a focal point that brought this neighborhood, which was being developed at the time as a community retail environment with interesting restaurants, etc. It gave it now an end point. Right in front of the theater and public library then became this courtyard, green space, if you will, at the end of the boulevard. We designed the Signature Theater with a glass front. You could see patrons climbing the stairs, beautiful stairs, curvilinear stairs, up to the main lobby, which is actually upstairs. So we had to find a way strategically to have a successful black box theater on the second floor and a public library just below it, acoustically sensitive, on the first floor. It did take a lot of stakeholder engagement because, as you can understand, there's different entities dealing with the library and the theater. You've got the private side and you have the public side. You have the government, you have the planning board, you have the community, and you have the boulevard, and you have all of the retail around it. And everybody has a vested interest in the success of this project.